midway to later through the season and didn't get in. So, again, this is another one of the scenarios where they could win and they could flat out still not make it because you talked about the committee not wanting to put a Big 12 team in. I think the committee would be happy if they could put 4 SEC teams in this thing. So the fact that if Georgia and Alabama play a close game, both of those teams could stay in the top 4 with Clemson and Notre Dame. So it's very possible that everybody could win the games they're supposed to and still not make it in, which is what I'm hoping for.
Well, we always kind of root for chaos in this type of scenario. So let's talk about some chaos here. Georgia beats Alabama, Northwestern beats Ohio State, and Pittsburgh beats Clemson. That creates some chaos.
Well, what happens is if let's say Ohio State loses, let's say Georgia loses, let's say Oklahoma loses, it's very possible that Michigan could work their way back into the number 4 spot if Georgia gets blown out. So, don't count the Big Ten yet just because, Ohio State would lose. There's still a possibility that you could see a team like Michigan or UCF climb right back up into the top 4 should that scenario happen. So, if things could play out to be a very fun day today in college football.
Well, the road is paved for UCF. Obviously, they play Memphis. I don't see much of a danger for them. So there might be that far-fetched scenario, but we'll see what happens. That's for sure as we get closer to the playoffs committee. So we're going into Week 12 in the NFL. We'll start here in our backyard. The Indianapolis Colts play a very confused, disoriented, and beat up Jacksonville Jaguars. On the road, they are on fire, and certainly there's a lot of scenarios here. If Cleveland can find a way to beat the Texans, if Atlanta beats Baltimore and we beat Jacksonville, there's a scenario for you right there, where we could cement or get close to cementing that number 6 spot or get into the wild card. We're definitely in the wild card race.
Yeah, for sure the Colts have looked great and continue to win football games. And, a lot of folks this week who were Colts fans were happy that Blake Bortles isn't playing. But, last time Cody Kessler stepped in, he played a pretty good game for Jacksonville when Blake Bortles was benched. And I know a lot of folks this week were happy that Leonard Fournette's suspended and not playing. But let's be honest, T.J. Yeldon's killed the Colts. So I don't think Colts fans can just sit back and say, oh, this is an easy win for the Colts, because I don't know that that's the case. But it's definitely a football game that they can win and should win. And, Cleveland, they do their job in Houston. This could be a Colts team that not only is looking for a wild card spot, but maybe got a chance to catch Houston.
Well, that would be fantastic. Absolutely. Well, let's take a look at did you watch Thursday night's game against the Saints and the Cowboys? I don't know, man. As much as I don't like to root for the Cowboys showed us a lot on Thursday night, coming out and beating a very strong Saints. The Cowboys are showing us that, hey, they want to be playing in Atlanta this year.
Yeah, the one thing, though, is that, let's be honest, New Orleans didn't press hard in the second half at that point. It was a football game. They probably could have come back and won, but I think at that point they were just trying not to get guys hurt. Dallas, when the defense shows up and Dak Prescott doesn't have to carry the football team, the offense doesn't have to carry the football team, they can win football games, and they have the right game plan coming in there, and the fact that, they wanted to keep Drew Brees off the field, and you got a high-powered offense, you definitely want to keep the quarterback off the field, and Dallas did that. I don't know that they're a team that I would consider putting my money on down the line in the playoffs, but they're definitely a team that could throw a monkey wrench into everything come playoff time.
The Giants are starting to show a little bit of improvement. The Chicago Bears are showing a lot of improvement. Chicago Bears are at the Giants. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's going to be a game that's going to be downright ugly to watch, I'm assuming, because Chase Daniel will start against the Chicago Bears. And Eli with that Bears defense, when Eli and the Giants have played defenses this year that have really, putting pressure on the quarterback, he's not been great. So, it's a defense that'll be fun to watch Saquon Barkley try to take on this defense as well. Can the Bears score enough offense with Chase Daniel in there to win the football game? So it'll probably be a reminiscent of the Thanksgiving game against Detroit, where it'll just be an ugly game.
We've got Arizona and Green Bay. Green Bay is really struggling. Obviously, we saw them struggle again last week against Minnesota, a rivalry team there. You would think that their head coach is on the way out, but what are your thoughts? The Green Bay Packers just can't seem to figure it out this year.
Well, I mean, Green Bay's a team that's got the same record as the Cleveland Browns right now, and who would have thought that earlier in the year? This Arizona team, though, let's be honest, is not good. So it should be a way for Green Bay to get their mojo back. But, I would assume that Mike McCarthy's on his way out at this point, like you said. And it's got to be a heck of a role that Green Bay's got to get on to make this not a lost season. So it'll be fun to see what happens there. But this should be an easy win for Green Bay against Arizona.
Panthers and Buccaneers.
Weird game. Panthers are a team that should be better. They've kind of hit the skids the last couple of weeks. They've got all the talent to be a really good football team. It'll be interesting to see if that team returns. And the Bucs, you never know week to week. They're a very Jekyll and Hyde team. They're a team that can pour on some points to keep in games, and they're a team that can just look terrible at times. I guess it depends on which Jameis Winston shows up this week. And can they continue to try to run the football? So it'll be a weird game. It's one of those games that just screams, don't play this game. Don't put your money on this game.
Rams are on fire. I don't see anything here other than them flying across the country to Detroit that will contribute to a loss. The Rams and the Lions.
Yeah, I mean, the Lions have been terrible. Matthew Stafford has looked like he regressed a bunch this year. They've taken pieces away from him as well. And imagine how fast and how fun this Rams offense is going to look on this turf come Sunday. So I'm looking forward to watching the Rams play in Detroit on the turf. It should be a lot of fun to watch Todd Gurley just tear this Lions defense apart.
I want to get into some NBA talk here in just a second, but Ed wasn't able to join us today. But tomorrow, Monday, the Redskins and the Eagles. The Redskins could give the Eagles a run for their money. They're suffering a Super Bowl hangover. However, that said, Eagles win, and maybe that hangover is starting to go away.
Yeah, I mean, you got to feel bad for the Redskins who lost Alex Smith to a horrific injury. And it could be, for good. We'll have to wait and see. But, it's a team that, when a lot of times you said, hey, who's leading the NFC East? Well, I think your last choice would have been the Redskins. But, the Eagles were able to come back last week, and hopefully they can get things turned around. You wonder if Carson Wentz is yet 100%. The Eagles have tried to figure out that running game after injuries. Darren Sproles has said he'll play Monday night. He's going to return, which will help out. As Josh Adams, the former Notre Dame kid, has become the clear, it looks like, number one in the running game there. And the defense, which was so good last year, has not been great this year. But Washington hasn't been a team that's been able to score a lot of points either. So I think if you shut down Adrian Peterson on Monday night, I don't know that Colt McCoy's arm is going to beat you, but that's if you're the defense, what you hope that you can do. So I think this is an Eagles win. I get it, too bad for the Redskins at this point to, be having a pretty decent season and lose their quarterback. But I think the Eagles get it done Monday night.
Well, let's get into some NBA talk. We'll start with the Indiana Pacers, as we talked a little bit earlier about Victor Oladipo being gone. We'll say indefinitely, or maybe not as much. They're struggling in other areas. The Pacers there's still a lot of time. You still have plenty of time, but obviously we're dealing with the Celtics in the East. But the Pacers just seem to be nothing to get that. I guess maybe we're comparing it to last year, maybe them to play last year, as we've talked about before. But the Indiana Pacers, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you got to look at it, you try to compare it to last year, and I think that's unfair just for the fact that if you're just comparing it to their playoff run against the games against the Cavs and LeBron James, is that, Bogdanovich played out of his mind in those playoffs, and, he's not a guy who's going to do that for you every single night throughout an 82-game season. I think it feels like Miles Turner's regressed a little bit to me. I think Sabonis is the guy who should be starting at this point. And let's be honest, the addition of Tyreke Evans is good, another guy who can score and get his own shot, but the Pacers don't have a lot of those guys other than Oladipo and Tyreke Evans, who plays a lot with the second unit. So The Pacers are still another really good player, almost superstar away from being a real contender. I think they'll be a nice probably playoff spot, 4 or 5, but they need to attract somebody to Indianapolis to play alongside Victor Oladipo. And I think the more that the Pacers can, win and put that up, put wins up on the board and do well in the playoffs, that hopefully will attract a big-time free agent to town. Or they're going to have to make a trade to bring somebody in to help Victor Oladipo. Maybe look at moving on from a guy like Miles Turner at some point because of Sabonis' play. So there are some pieces that still need to be fit. It's a fun team. They definitely play up-tempo. And you could tell the last few games that Victor played that obviously he didn't have that springy first step. And for a guy who also tries to play very good defense, that's tough on a guy. The Pacers have hit a little bit of a skid, but I don't think it's unfair to try to compare them to last year's playoff team.
It's early in the season, but we're starting to see some coaches on the hot seat. Let's start with the Washington Wizards. They certainly were well behind. He had the full support of the franchise with the team's 1-5 start. But now a month later, the Wizards are looking to maybe do a shake and bake. It might be on the verge of a total reset that could involve dealing multiple players and taking and removing Brooks from his position. Is Scott Brooks the right man for the Washington Wizards?
I guess it depends on which way they want to go. If they're going to blow it up and bring in a bunch of young players, then he might be, just for the fact that he did it well when he was in Oklahoma City. It depends on what they want to do. I think John Wall has created a bunch of issues there at that point. But this could be a chance. We talked about the Pacers needing to bring in somebody to play alongside Victor Oladipo. Bradley Beal and Victor Oladipo as your backcourt would be phenomenal. The question would be, what do you have to give up? And if you had to give up Miles Turner to get Bradley Beal, I'd do that all day. So, that could be a spot where the Pacers could benefit from the Washington Wizards. Again, it's going to depend on what they decide to do. Are they going to blow the team up and start over? If they're going to keep John Wall and Bradley Beal as their core, it might be time to move on from Scott Brooks.
Bradley Beal, certainly he's one that we would want to talk about. That overtime victory over the Houston Rockets back in November, a few days ago, I should say. The Washington Wizards, Bradley Beal shows that he wants to play somewhere that's going to win, and I would think the Pacers would certainly want to talk to Bradley Beal, so that's a good thing that you would bring him up. John Wall, what are your thoughts about John Wall? He also with the Wizards. Thoughts on him staying or going?
I think if you blow it up, he definitely winds up going as long as you can find somebody to take him. Everybody in the league is somebody who's interested in Bradley Beal. The Wizards really want you to take John Wall because he's caused some problems and he's owed a ton of money. And that's a guy that definitely the Pacers should stay away from. Even if he is available, he's often injured. He's become a little bit of a crybaby the last couple of years, and he's owed a ton of money. So hopefully the Pacers don't make that mistake of taking John Wall because the price tag is too high on Bradley Beal. But Bradley Beal is the coveted asset of that team. So, but from what I've heard, teams around the league who've called out Bradley Beal, that they've tried to have John Wall pushed off on him, and I don't think that that's a move that most teams want to make.
A few final thoughts here. Obviously, you covered Cleveland. You covered the Cleveland Cavaliers. This year, they cut ties with Tyronn Lue, which was a well-needed thing to do. They don't have King James anymore. Clearly, the East belongs to the Celtics. But you got to look farther up the chain with the Cleveland Cavaliers. They might want to start cleaning house, and Kobe Altman might be out. Might be looking for another job soon.
Well, the fact, though, that Kobe Altman got 2 draft picks for Kyle Korver is downright amazing. He's put in a bad position, let's be honest. He's put in a position to where all of a sudden your moneymaker, left town. So, that part's not his fault. He would be the one that takes the fall, but at the end of the day, Dan Gilbert is the reason that LeBron James is no longer in Cleveland. It's nothing else but that. The relationship soured again. And trust me, had LeBron come back to Cleveland, he wanted to come back to Cleveland the whole time, but coming back to Cleveland, if Dan Gilbert hadn't been the owner, LeBron James would still be a Cleveland Cavalier. So, Kobe Altman will be the guy ultimately to take the fall. But, Kobe Altman's also a guy who doesn't make a ton of money. If you look at GMs in the NBA, and Dan Gilbert is very cheap a lot of times when it comes to his front office. Dan Gilbert's also the guy that got rid of the GM that, helped put together their championship team. So, Kobe Altman probably sticks around just because he's paid so little. Remember last time when they were doing their GM search, so many guys turned them down for that job. just because of the uncertainty of LeBron James. And I don't know what GM would want to come into a rebuild at this point. And for last weekend, the Cavaliers kind of forgot their mission. They started, beating teams. They beat the Rockets, and they beat a couple other teams and won, 3 straight. So they got back to the